million. It was a civil case, a civil settlement. It didn't include any admission of guilt. But Chandler was famously able to identify markings on Michael Jackson's genitals. To those who say that's evidence of, there's no smoke without fire and so on, what do you say?
Netflix wants you to believe they're the good guys. The platform that built an empire on true crime, on giving voice to the voiceless, on holding power accountable. But what happens when the person they're going after has already been investigated, already stood trial, and already been found not guilty by a jury of 12 people? That's exactly the question Michael Jackson's own lawyer is answering out loud on camera, and he is not holding back. Because according to him, Netflix didn't just tell a one-sided story. They buried the legal record, ignored the acquittal, and let two accusers say whatever they wanted with zero pushback and no cross-examination. Just narrative. And here's the part that should make every single one of you uncomfortable. This same network has been remarkably careful when it came to other public figures accused of far worse, with far less evidence behind them. So why the difference? Why does Michael Jackson get the documentary treatment reserved for guilty men when the courts already said otherwise? His lawyer thinks he knows exactly why. And honestly, after looking into this, I think he's right. This is Trent Williams. Let's get into it.
Well, the lawyer seen there in that clip was Michael Jackson's defense attorney during his infamous trial, Thomas Mesereau, who convinced the jury to find Jackson not guilty on all 14 counts. He didn't take part in the documentary, but he's agreed to join us for the first interview since its release. Thomas, a long time since I've interviewed you. Great to see you again.
Great to see you, and it's nice to be back, and thank you for the invitation.
It's a kind of fascinating moment of many fascinating moments in the world of Michael Jackson before, during, and after his death, because on the one hand, you have this blockbuster smash hit movie glorifying the wondrous performer, the singer, the dancer, the superstar, and then it stops before any of the other stuff gets involved, the child molestation trial and so on. And now with Netflix coming out with this documentary, that shows that side of it. So you have the two parts, really, of the Michael Jackson story. You didn't take part in the Netflix documentary. Why did you decide not to?
Well, first of all, this is a very joyous time for supporters and lovers of Michael Jackson. The biopic is setting all kinds of records. His memorabilia is selling all over the world. His music is streaming all over the world. Even his book Moonwalk is flying off the shelves. I mean, this is a great time to be a supporter and lover of Michael Jackson. So why do we need a biopic not a biopic. Why do we need a documentary in the middle of this that goes back 21 years in a case where he was completely exonerated? The jury deliberated for 8 days. They had seen almost 5 months of testimony. They had been in trial 5 days a week during those 5 months. They deliberated 8 days, and they came back with not guilty on every felony count and every misdemeanor count. 14 times they said not guilty. He was totally exonerated. So why are we going through a documentary on this? What's the point? I don't think we need a documentary on this. I think there've been enough, and I didn't want to participate in it because we don't need it. He was exonerated. The jury couldn't have sent a stronger message. And let me say this. Who was on this jury, Piers? We had a white civil engineer who described himself as conservative. We had a retired school principal with a master's degree in counseling. We had a mathematics teacher with a master's degree in mathematics. We had a head of a local social services agency who had been married to a police officer. We had a journalist. We had people in the military nearby at a base very well prominent in that location. We had 2 women who had experienced molestation in their own family. We had a majority women. We had no African American. Nobody could say this was a racially biased jury or a racial verdict. They deliberated. They heard all the evidence. The case is closed. We don't need to revisit this again. And unfortunately, you can't do a short documentary that does justice to all the evidence and witnesses the jurors heard, saw, and thought about. You can't do it. So I don't think the timing is suspicious, and I don't think we need another documentary on this case.
You know, I had two sort of direct involvements with Michael Jackson, both with him and then with his father. In 1999, I interviewed Michael for the Daily Mirror newspaper when I was the editor over there. And he said this to me.
Listen to the way Jackson's voice breaks in this interview with Piers Morgan. You can hear the pain in his voice as he's accused of doing something heinous.
I would slit my wrist before I would. Yeah. I could never, ever. I would love to live in London because I love it so much. It's just the press is so hard on me here, and I try to do so good. I go to their hospital, and I give presents to the children. As soon as I leave, the next day they go, Wacko Jacko left the hospital, and he ignored all the children. And it hurt my heart because I purposely flew Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse all the way from Euro Disney. I brought them with me to surprise the children. I brought bags. Right on the street now? Yeah, I brought bags of presents and everything. And I spent time with the kid, and they made fun of me.
You know, it was quite a wide-ranging interview, but he got quite emotional and tearful when he was talking about the allegations against him and was utterly emphatic he'd never do anything to hurt a child. And in 2013, when I was at CNN, I interviewed his father, Joe, and asked him outright if he ever had cause for thinking that Michael might be a danger to children. Let's take a look. You never saw anything that concerned you?
There's nothing concerning because
you never felt...
We knew Michael.
Right.
We knew our son.
So interesting to hear those again after all these years. But did you, just finally, before I bring the other panel members in, Thomas, did you ever have any cause for concern about Michael Jackson and children?
Well, when I got into the case, I didn't know who to believe or what to take into account. My mind was clear. I didn't form conclusions. I dug into the evidence. I spent a lot of time with him, and I concluded there is no way this man ever molested a child, abused a child, hurt a child. No way possible. And I still feel that way today.
Do you feel there's been a kind of commercial whirlwind around this issue, that people have raced to make money out of it, to be blunt?
Well, that's what it is. The media, I'm not including everybody, the media tends to want to glorify salacious allegations. They don't like to spend time on the counter argument. So the media and this documentary spends time on very dramatic, disturbing, salacious allegations and doesn't do justice to the problems with the prosecution's witnesses and the prosecution's case. For example, there's no mention of Chris Tucker, who was our last witness, the famous comedian and actor. He testified as our last witness. He said that he knew this family, he had experience with them, he had concerns about them, and he told Michael to be careful. And he described the accuser as cunning. I called Jay Leno as a witness. Jay Leno testified that the accuser and someone in the background, he thought it was his mother, called him. He got on the phone. The accuser sounded scripted. Something seemed off. He thought they were after money, but they didn't ask for it. And after that phone call, he told his staff to never put them through again. Comedian George Lopez testified that people in the accuser's family accused him of stealing from the accuser's wallet, a couple $100. We had a witness who ran a local newspaper nearby the location where this family was operating. And she said that she was approached by the mother. The mother said they were out of funds. They needed money for their child's health care. And she tried to raise money through the newspaper, only to find out that they were using insurance through the Teamsters Union. And she said, I was duped. We had other witnesses like this. They don't appear in the documentary. No documentary, given the time limits, can do justice to the case we put on. And again, I want to repeat, 10 felonies, 4 misdemeanors, not guilty every time, a clean sweep against the prosecution, total exoneration of Michael Jackson.
And just finally, Thomas, obviously probably the most infamous case was brought against Michael was from Jordan Chandler, who settled out of court for an estimated $23 million. It was a civil case, a civil settlement. It didn't include any admission of guilt, but Chandler was famously able to identify markings on Michael Jackson's genitals. To those who say that's evidence of, there's no smoke without fire and so on, what do you say?
I'm not going to comment on that case. As I sit here today, Michael Jackson was never convicted of a crime of any kind in any criminal courtroom anywhere in the world. He was a wonderful person.
So let's just sit with what we actually heard there, because I think it's easy to let a clip like that wash over you and move on to the next video. But what he's describing isn't a small editorial choice. It's a pattern. Think about what a documentary is supposed to do. It's supposed to investigate. It's supposed to present evidence, weigh it, and let the audience come to their own conclusion. That's the entire premise Netflix sells you when they put documentary in the title instead of docuseries or true crime drama. They're telling you that this is journalism. It is a fact. And when you put that label on something, you take on a responsibility to be fair, to include context, and not just hand the microphone to one side of a legal dispute that has already played out in a courtroom. Because here's what doesn't get said enough. Michael Jackson was tried. In 2005, 14 counts. A jury, not a streaming executive, not a documentary producer, an actual jury, under oath, heard testimony from the accuser, from medical experts, from former staff, from people who worked at Neverland and saw what happened on a daily basis. And after weeks of testimony, that jury came back unanimous. He was not guilty on every single count. Now, you can have your own opinion about Michael Jackson, the person. You can find his behavior strange, his choices questionable. All of that is fair game. But there's a difference between I find this person odd and I'm going to produce a film that retries a case that already happened. Except this time, the defendant doesn't get a lawyer, doesn't get to cross-examine, and doesn't get to call a single witness. That's not a documentary. That's a one-sided retrial with better lighting. And this is where the double standard his lawyer is talking about really starts to bite. Because we've all seen how networks, including Netflix, handle other high-profile figures accused of misconduct. They had multiple sources, a couple of on-camera denials included, legal disclaimers running through the entire runtime, producers bending over backwards to say these are allegations, not proven facts. That's the standard treatment. That's what responsible journalism is supposed to look like, even when covering someone the public has already decided they don't like. So why didn't Jackson get that? Why was a man who was legally acquitted treated with less caution, less balance, and less basic journalistic fairness than people who haven't even gone to trial yet? You don't have to be a Jackson fan to find that genuinely strange. You don't even have to think he was innocent. You just have to believe that the process matters. Not guilty should mean something, even years later, even when it's commercially inconvenient for a streaming platform that knows true crime about a dead celebrity prints money. And that's really the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath all of this. Documentaries like this aren't being made because new evidence emerged. They're being made because Michael Jackson can't sue for defamation. He's dead, and dead celebrities make for risk-free content. So there has been no lawsuits, no rebuttal, no inconvenient legal team showing up at the premiere. Just a story told exactly the way the producers want it told, about a man who isn't here to answer back. His lawyer is one of the only people left who actually was there, who saw the trial, who saw the evidence the jury saw, not the heavily edited version the public got handed years later. And when someone with that level of access calls it a disgusting double standard, I don't think that's a hyperbole. To me, that's someone watching history get rewritten in real time and refusing to stay quiet about it. So here's what I keep coming back to. If we're going to let streaming platforms produce documentaries about real people, real legal cases, real outcomes, we should expect the same standard of fairness whether the subject is alive to defend himself or not. Anything less isn't documentary filmmaking. It's just storytelling with the inconvenient parts removed. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you found this one interesting, There's plenty more where we dig into exactly this kind of media accountability. I'll see you in the next one.